Now it's time to do some cool stuff with that navigation bar. And that is, we want to do what's called type ahead on this search function. So that is, if I type out try Django or try Angular or new item, whatever, it's going to give me some suggestions on what those things are, and then we'll be able to click them and it will take us to them. So to do this, we are going to be using UI Bootstrap. I know I mentioned that we probably wouldn't use this. We're not going to go into too much depth here. Really, we're going to be using the one directive, that is type ahead. Now, of course, there's all kinds of other directions, like there's stuff for buttons, there's stuff for the carousel, also collapse, all sorts of things here, right? But we're going to be going off of type ahead, and we're not actually going to be going directly off of this. We already have done some tests that is going to be using a lot of the things that are on here, but it's not going to be exactly the things that are on here. So that is something that we'll be doing right now. Now, to get this started, we want to actually go back to the top and we want to download this. So we're going to download the minified version, or we can download the minified version. So I download it, and notice that I see that I include the templates. I see that it says UI Bootstrap TPLS, and I can actually use that, or I can type in Angular UI CDN in Google, CDN as in Content Delivery Network, and I can just click on this one, and notice that I have a few options, and the TPLS is the one that I'm going to go off of. So that basically, I believe, includes the templates. So I think that's what TPLS stands for, is templates. That seems likely. Where the other ones don't have templates, that's what I'm guessing. So that's what we're actually going to end up doing, is we're going to be using the CDN version like we have with other things, and I'm going to put it below the CDN version of our other items that we've used. So now that we've got that there, let's go ahead and see how we actually install it. And notice it says UI Bootstrap. That's what we're going to actually add into our module. Something that you do want to note is we're using the one for Angular 1.5. There is an Angular 2 version, but that is not the one we are going off of. So if for some reason this URL changed, definitely just search Angular UI Bootstrap 1.5 or AngularJS UI Bootstrap, and it should bring you somewhere to this depending on when you look at it. All right, going back into Sublime Text, we're going to jump into our module, and we're just going to add in UI Bootstrap into the module list. There we go. And now what I want to do is open up that try nav directive, because this is where we're going to be doing it. So the try nav directive, as well as the try nav HTML button. And we're going to be updating this input here. So this input is where we're doing the type ahead. But before we actually do that, what are we going to be typing ahead? What are we going to be searching? And for us, we're going to keep it nice and simple, and all I'm going to search are the blog items. So every blog item that actually exists, that's what we're going to be using with. So we're going to be using the post module. That means in our try nav module, we want to import the post module by adding it into the try nav module. And then in the directive, we're just going to add in the post here. And I'm also going to add in location. This will make sense once we get to it, but basically we want to have some sort of function that will change it to any given location. All right. So now that I've got this, let's go ahead and look at what I need to do. First of all, I want to add a scope here, and we're going to call it items. Now, this is very similar to what we've seen before with our blog list. So in the blog list, we have our scope items here. Now, of course, we could do this same sort of thing, the query, and setting it up like this. We wouldn't want to do the columns. We don't need to chunk it at all, but we do want to use these scope items like we have in here. So scope items.data. So this right here is what we're going to be kind of emulating inside of our directive. So I'm just going to do post.query. That's what I'm going to leave it as. Of course, there's other things on how we can clean this up a little bit, but that's where we're going to leave it. So that's the actual items, and then I'm going to want to actually do something when I select one of these items. So I'm going to leave it commented out for now, but I'll do scope dot, let's say select item, and it's going to be equal to a function. So that's what we want to eventually work towards. So in that function, that's where it's going to actually do the navigation for us, that is, bring us to that individual blog. So now that we've got this, let's actually get the Typeahead working inside of this input. Now, the first thing I want to do is actually add an actual ng model to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just space these things out a little bit so I can see it a little bit cleaner. So I'll say ng-model equals to, and I'm going to call this search query. Not to get it confused with any sort of other model. If there is a possibility of confusing it with other model, search query is likely not going to do that, right? That's likely going to be our general search query. Now what we want to do is uib-typeahead equals to, and this is where we do our iterations here. So this also you can look at the documentation for. So in the directives of Typeahead, we can see the examples of each one. So the very basic ones at the top, notice it says UI Typeahead, and then it's state for states and states, filter, blah, blah, blah. So what's going on here is we want to actually set a variable. So for us, it's going to be post, and then it's going to be for post in items, because we called the context items. And then we're going to go back, and we're going to still do that same filter and the limit to. So let's add those in, filter and limit to. Okay, so post, we'll see what this does in a second, but items itself, let's go ahead and look at that module, the directive itself. So items is the scope. So if we called this posts, we would have to come back and change this right here. But we'll keep it as items. And these two are, this is the object and this is a variable. So we're setting some variable here, and then we're using that variable here, and I'll show you what that does in just a second. This will be the actual object, but this is the actual iteration. So it's similar to like the ng repeat, but we added just one other element, which is this post for. Okay, so the final thing is we can do Typeahead -on -select, and we can actually run some sort of function here. So the function being, we called it select item. So let's uncomment this out now, and it's select item, and we're going to want to have our actual item come through here. So I'm going to say item, model, and label. So these things are going to be passed by default. So I'm going to just console log each one of these. First off, the item, console log the model, console log the label. Okay, so we've got that. And in my blog list, I know that there is this other console, or excuse me, we had a console log in our blog list for watch function. So let's go ahead and comment that out as well, just so we don't see any other console items coming through. Okay, and now back into the HTML, we want to actually have this select item function on here, and we want to pass all of those things that we just had. So item, model, and label. Okay, so this is how it works. This is actually set up now for Typeahead. Let's go into Angular and try it out. We'll do new item. Notice it says object.object, or excuse me, object. So this is actually the object itself. And that's because of this right here. So if I change this to post.id and refreshed and type out new item, it's going to show me that ID, right? So that's essentially what it's showing me. If I did post.title, then it should show me that title. So new item. And there it is. So another thing that I can do here is I could change this to, let's just say item, and then you just called it item.title, right? New item, still there. But also if I type out anything else like T, it gives me all of the T ones and everything in there, which is really pretty cool. So now what we need to do is finish off that function. So if I say new item and actually press on it here, let's see what it does. We're going to inspect the element there, console, and we just get new item and as well as a resource. So let's go back into our directive, and I'm going to actually, let's refresh it one more time and just do new item, click it once, and then we see resource is the first one, new item are the second two. So item itself is the ng resource. So that's the resource from the post query. So what that means is we can do location dot path, and then we could do our link. So blog plus item dot ID. Save that, we refresh. Now if we do new item and I click on it, it takes me to that new item. Notice I have to click on it. But something else that we might note is the search query doesn't go away, it actually stays there. This is okay because if we look at the model itself, it is search query. So all we have to do here is change scope.search query to an empty query. So let's go back and try new item again, click on it, and notice that search goes away. That's really good. So now it actually is working. There is one more step that we might want to think about here, and that is with the form. So the actual form, if I click on submit here, nothing happens. If I type new item and not click that, but click submit, it doesn't go anywhere. Now, the reason Typeahead can work really well sometimes, if I click on this, that should actually take me directly to the item. Whereas if I type and actually search new item and hit submit, it shouldn't take me anywhere. It should actually take me to a search. But we aren't going to set up that search. We're just going to do ng submit, and we're going to make another one, and we'll say search query, or search item. Let's say search item, and then we'll pass in, well, we really just need that model. So search item as ng submit should work fine for us. So let's go back into our directive and do scope.search item equals to the function. And then in here, I'm just going to console log the scope.search query. And you could also have this location set up where it's going to go location path. And then this time we would do question mark query equals to that search query. So instead of the item itself, it would actually go to something like this. This is something where we might be able to have it work. So let's actually try it out. I'll try it again. I'll do new item, and I'll just hit enter this time. Notice it doesn't change anything. So if I go new item, pressing enter actually goes to that selected one. Where if I did that T again and press down, it will actually go down, and I can actually select one of those. I get a little error here, which we'll come back to, but let's try new item again and just hit submit. And now it takes me to blog, and then it takes me to this other place, right? It's not actually searching it for us. It seems like it was going to, but this didn't work. Notice it escaped out everything. So we want to just change that real quick by simply, we'll get rid of this, put a period here, or excuse me, parentheses, period, search, q, comma, and then that's scope search query. This actually adds that get request, or the get parameter inside of that location path search. So if I refresh again and do new item and hit submit, it now does an actual search there. So there's a few things that I need to do, and that is update my blog list. So the list element's there. So if I click on blog or search something, it actually does search what I need to search. Those are the things that I still need to do. But new item now works. So we now have Typeahead working, and it's actually bringing us where we want to go, that is to that particular blog item. Okay, so there's still some things that we want to clean up, but that is the UI Bootstrap. That is something that I thought was really good for you guys to check out, really because it's pretty useful, and you do see that Typeahead used a lot. Now, something that is important to note is you can have the Typeahead have no results, right? So if no results are showing, it can do some stuff there. So ng show no results, that sort of stuff. But you can also have loading. So if there's actual loading, like as in you have like an HTTP request, and it's the server is actually loading, so doing an AJAX loading, you can actually show some stuff there as well, which this kind of shows you that example. But again, we can't really simulate that here because we don't have a server that we actually have set up to do the simulation. All right, so if you have any questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.